I want to talk about Europe. Europe primarily, but it's a phenomenon worldwide. This parochialism that we're getting, understandably, by the way, in Europe, it's motivated partly by fear, fear of migration, fear of international terrorism. But it's not a uniquely European phenomena, and there are many reasons for it. It's the same in Australia, in Brazil, in Italy, in Hungary. There are many nations that are moving towards a narrowing of their outlook. You could call it Trumpism, and perhaps it is. It is that kind of same ethos that Donald Trump has, and not in every instance is it fear motivated. It often is, but there are other factors. Maybe it's a swinging of the pendulum in some degree. In Britain, there's another phenomenon, which is, of course, an anti-establishmentarianism, a sense of resentment with the failure of the government to deliver on the major issue of the day, the issue of Britain leaving Europe. And indeed, actually, it's not just the government, but the opposition, the principal opposition, the Labour Party, has been punished as well. And we're seeing phenomena like this throughout Europe. In France, Macron's party did well. Marine Le Pen, the kind of fascist party, did well. In Germany, we punished Angela Merkel. The voters published Angela Merkel, the leader of Germany, and she'd done good work actually in the past on the refugee issue. But she was severely kicked in this election. And why and wherefore are we moving against this internationalism that has been the great vision for the world? You know, Khalil Gibran, the wonderful Lebanese mystic poet who used to believe in a world without frontiers. That's the kind of world that we all want to embrace, a world in which there is one brotherhood and sisterhood of mankind. In the words of the old Blue Mink song from the 60s, you know, we'll churn out coffee-coloured people by the score. That kind of melting pot world. What's it gone? Where's that dream gone, that vision? Well, maybe it's still there. I think we live in an internet age, and this is a blip, and an understandable blip. People are concerned about the rapid pace of change, and they want to hold on to what's best from the past. So there is a need for understanding, but also there are consequences. Now, some of these consequences are good, some of these are not so good. For example, let's just take Britain, because it has consequences for the world, what's happening in Britain. Britain is an important nation. It's the 5th largest economy in the world, and it's one of the permanent 5 members of the United Nations Security Council. So it still matters. What to say about Britain? Britain is going to elect a new prime minister, or at least select a new prime minister. The Conservative Party will do that. We will not have a general election, not now, not any time between now and 2022, when we're forced to have one. Why? Because the British members of Parliament are too frightened. Turkeys do not vote for Christmas. They may say they might, but they won't. It would be a catastrophe for the British Parliament, because look at the election results. The worst results for the Conservative Party in Britain in more than 200 years. So they're not going to risk it. There'll be no general election whilst the Brexit issue has been unresolved. So we're going to have a new Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will be who? The Prime Minister will be Boris Johnson, our former Foreign Secretary. Well, I mean, is that inevitable? Almost inevitable, because he has a charismatic approach, and that is what the Conservative and Unionist Party in Britain need. What are the consequences? The consequences are that we will leave the European Union on the 31st of October, Halloween, the day when we all carve pumpkins and little children collect sweets in the streets, and everybody's frightened of ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties. And that is the day when we shall leave the European Union, because we leave with no deal. Fine. Does that matter to the world? Maybe yes, maybe no. But remember, Boris Johnson will be our Prime Minister. He is very pro-Israel, very pro-Trump. Him and Donald Trump will be a item. They will be together on everything. They'll make a new, very flamboyant unit in the world. So, interesting times. He'll leave without a deal because the European Union will not be able to renegotiate on his terms. The consequences of Europe will be difficult because financially, because Britain contributes to Europe significantly. And some would say the consequences for Britain will be catastrophic economically because of the failure to reach a trade agreement with Europe. I'm not sure about that, and if that is the case, then of course beautiful blonde Prime Minister will not last very long, and come 2022 we will have Jeremy Corbyn in office, because the electorate punishes economic failure in most countries in the Western world. If they'll forgive a lot of things, but they won't forgive a failed economy. And therefore, we'll have Jeremy Corbyn. Consequences there are interesting. It will, by the way, I don't think Labour Party is strong enough to form a government by itself post the 2022 election. It'll be a Labour-Liberal alliance. But in my view, and I'm here to present my view, I presume so you're lumbered with it. And it'd be in some ways very good for the Middle East. Maybe whether it's good for Britain is a different issue. For the Middle East, it'll be interestingly good if you are a person that believes in a two-state solution, for example, to the Palestine-Israel question, because Corbyn has already committed to delivering to delivering recognition of Palestine by the British government, which would be the first major Western power to recognize the Palestinian state and grant full recognition to the Palestinian state. So that's a major step forward for Palestine, and a major step forward for the concept of the two-state solution. It really does hammer a nail into the coffin of the kind of hegemonic approach by Israel, because it's very difficult to justify a one-state solution then, at least in my view. So it's an interesting time, interesting possible consequences of what's going on at the moment, and parochialism, of course, will be difficult for the migration issue. I mean, we'll see more barriers going up in Europe. Maybe a harsher approach to internationally. And also, notice the emergence of the Greens. That will mean a greater push, if anything, towards alternative energy. Does that impact the Middle East as well? Of course, in terms of oil production. In the long run, it certainly does. And the countries of the Arab Middle East should have one eye on the future, because in the long term the world is moving away from dependence on hydrocarbon production, and maybe rather more rapidly than people in the Middle East are prepared for. So interesting days, interesting times, interesting European elections, interesting future. All we can hope and pray is that there will be a move away from this spirit of parochialism. It's understandable. Was perhaps necessary, because it's better to pick up a voting slip than pick up a gun. People can let off steam and punish the establishment. Democracy has its pluses. It's perhaps necessary, but let's hope we move into a world in which there is greater internationalism, because that ultimately is the way forward for you, the way forward for me, the way forward for everyone. God bless you. Thank you.